exposing people is kind of the theme of our next story. And there is someone that is a leader, and I would argue an incredible leader. Obviously, I don't know what his direct leadership is like, and I don't know what it's like to work with him or for him or anything like that. But seeing the influence, the positive influence he's having on the world is really good. Jordan B. Peterson. He's exposed. He's trying to be exposed right now, being taken to court. So Jordan B. Peterson, if you have not heard of him, once again, link for the full podcast that he responds to this thing below. Go and check him out. He's talking with his daughter Michaela, and they're discussing the court's decision to penalize him. So what's happened is Jordan B. Peterson is a clinical psychologist that has become quite vocal and standing up for really championing young men to rise up to be men, but also spoken against a lot of the negativities and bad things that are happening in government. He's a Canadian. He spoke out against the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. He spoke against this transgender movement and what they're trying to do to young kids, and he's been quite vocal about that. And he's risen to stardom in recent years, and now probably one of the most influential voices, I would say, of our era. But some people have been trying to pull him down because of his positive influence, and the college where he is, the psychology college where he is registered, where he's registered as a clinical psychologist, have been threatening to remove his license to practice because of, well, his anti-woke agenda. And they've gone through this whole debacle, and they've recently ruled that to be able to have his license reinstated, he needs to go through social media training or retraining, but which is ridiculous, because like he says in his comments that they say you have to be trained by a social media expert, and he says, what's a social media expert? Like, there's no such thing as a social media expert, right? And so, because there's no qualification, there's no degree in it, there's no whatever. But he's in a desperate time, and he seems to be responding really well in this, and he's standing firm. He's staying focused on his cause, on his values, on his beliefs. But Dr. Rob, as an academic, because he's an academic, he's lectured. One of his big issues was his lecturing at a university. How would you take it if someone was revoking your right to do what you do?
Look, I hope I'd have the courage to act as he is acting, because he's really standing up against something which is really quite wrong, which is constraining a person's right to free speech. I think that's fundamentally what the issue is. He first came to prominence when he was quite vocal in his opposition to using pronouns, right?
Yeah.
When all this stuff broke out about using the correct pronouns for people, I mean, his view was you're a he or a she, and occasionally has referred to people as a thing. I think that might have been tongue-in-cheek. And look, a lot of people would be on his side, but ever since then, of course, he's been hounded. He ended up leaving his university position, and now his professional standing as a clinical psychologist has come under threat. And in order to redeem himself, he's supposed to have this retraining through a so-called social media expert. I mean, he claims that that's not a professional role, and that someone who's not a professional shouldn't be trying to retrain him. And I kind of agree with that.
Yeah.
He has become outspoken. He's conservative. He's a polymath. This man has knowledge about so many different areas
Yes.
of human endeavour. He's quite an amazing person. He's a bit too angry, perhaps.
Yeah.
And if you
He
watch
is
the whole
quite
of
aggressive, isn't
if,
he?
if you watch the whole of that YouTube video, he's a bit angry. Perhaps more angry there than he is in a number of other YouTube videos that you can also watch that are addressing the same issue. But essentially what he's done, he's come down on the other side of woke and said,
Yep.
no, I will not accept the whole sort of woke agenda. Now, I'm with him on that. I don't think we should have to accept the woke agenda when fundamentally we're talking about ideas, we're talking about worldviews, and it's actually okay to hold to different ideas. They should not be received as some kind of an insult or hurtful or any other sort of negative connotations. We're talking fundamentally here about ideas. Now, he, of course, took the professional association to a higher court, and the higher court actually sided with his professional body, and not only that, ordered him to pay costs of some $25,000. So he's up for that, plus whatever it cost him for his own legal team, which I imagine was that plus a whole lot more.
Oh, yeah.
So he's someone who's really prepared to put his money where his mouth is. There's no doubt about that. But one of the things that I found interesting and even worrying about it was the opening statement in terms of the summary of the judgment, which I just got it before me. Now I actually printed it out
Read it out
earlier
to
today. This is what it says. When individuals join a regulated profession, they do not lose their charter right to freedom of expression. At the same time, however, they take on obligations that must abide by the rules of their regulatory body that may limit their freedom of expression. In other words, you have a right of freedom of expression, but actually you don't. You know what I mean? I just think that's ridiculous language to use, but it's deliberate, of course.
In a professional body.
It's deliberate.
In an academically intelligent, supposedly professional body, that's in one sentence, they contradict themselves.
I don't know whether it is in a way a contradiction, but it's really overturning the idea of a kind of hierarchy in the sense that the right conferred upon somebody in the charter should take hierarchy or should take precedence over whatever a professional body says or whatever like a lower level of authority says. In other words, the charter should be preeminent. And look, this is a principle in policy. Yep. If I write a policy for an organisation, hierarchically that's inferior to government legislation, for example. So if I write a policy that is in some way contradictory to a government regulation or to legislation, then it'll be the legislation or the government regulation that takes precedence. So here they're actually saying, well, in some circumstances, the charter does not take precedence. That bothers me a lot. That really does bother me a lot. And Peterson wasn't making comments about his profession. So I suppose you could argue that his comments were bringing some kind of disrepute upon the profession, but I don't think there's any evidence of that.
No.
It's like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's been done wrong. He's going to take this as high as the Supreme Court. And he seems to be able to do that. Most ordinary Canadians would never be able to do that, in the same way that most ordinary Australians would never be able to take a challenge to our High Court, which is the highest court in the land. It's just too expensive.
Yeah.
So most people can't access the justice system because it's just too expensive for them to do so. So look, he's just on the wrong side of the line of thinking which has been adopted by a lot of people in influential power positions rather than influence. I don't think they've got a lot of influence, but they do have positional power, which they wield, I think, to the detriment of our society on the whole.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, like he says, he goes, well, I'm just lucky that I'm the sort of person that can afford to do this. That if they revoke his license, it doesn't affect him because he's not actually practicing anyway. Um, the cost is not important to him at the moment because he's making so much money now because he's shot to stardom. So luckily he's in a positive financial position that he can afford to take all this attack, as well as he has the exposure to be able to fight this as well, and not just be silenced. So and also he mentioned that he's got, this is only just one college in Ontario, but he's actually got invitations to join other colleges in other states or cities or whatever provinces, I think they call them. He says I can just go to a different province and get registered there, and it's fine because I've got invitations from other
Yeah,
places.
I didn't understand him to say that. He did talk about 3 other jurisdictions. I'm not sure whether they're in Canada. It might be a bit
Yeah,
difficult.
they were in
It might be a
Canada.
bit. They were they? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah. And it just seems like those colleges only, from what I understood from what he was saying, they only have that college is registered in that state, and then you can go to a different state or province or whatever they call them over there. Yeah,
It's a very troubling situation, really. You know, the funny thing is, if no one had taken any notice of him originally, we wouldn't know who he was. He'd still be
no,
working as an academic and publishing every now and then. And
yeah,
but you know, the people on the woke side decided to take umbrage at what he had to say, and they actually launched him into a global figure who's influencing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people with his own kind of rhetoric. And he has logic on his side.
yes,
Really, he's
yes,
so they shot themselves in the foot, well and truly.
yeah. I, it's almost like, I'm gonna do a Batman quote here, and I'm trying to get it right, but it's like, it's the, what was it? It's not the hero they wanted, it's the hero they needed, or something like whatever that quote is. It's just really interesting that it's kind of all things lined up for him, right? That he's the type of person that has good moral grounding. He's really intelligent, really knowledgeable in different areas, is vocal about what he knows about, also has now the financial backing to be able to do it. And so it's kind of all these things aligned so that these attacks, it almost feels like you can see God's hand in this, right? It almost feels like you can go, I can see that God kind of set him up a little bit, or maybe not set him up. Maybe all these troubles happened, and God kind of went, "Okay, you're having these troubles. Let me provide for you. Let me give you the position that you need. Let me give you the finances you need. Let me give you, And it almost seems like he was born for this, because just to see his fortitude against this, and none of this seems to bother him. I mean, sorry, bother's probably the wrong word, because
It does bother him a lot.
it bothers him.
And it has affected his health. I don't think there's any
Yes.
doubt about that. But he even says that I think he spent a lot of time over Christmas, mulling over this whole thing, and it probably actually ruined his Christmas.
Yes.
He's an absolutely amazing person. He clearly is extremely intelligent. But I do think he's genuinely angry.
Yes. Yes.
He certainly was on that video. As I said, I've seen a couple of other. He's done interviews with other podcasters on this topic, and he doesn't seem to be quite as emotional. But he just puts everything into it.
Yeah.
I just hope he gets a weekend off every now and then. That's all I can say. But look,
Yeah.
his qualities as a leader, clearly he's an influencer because so many
Yeah.
people follow him on his own podcasts, and he's sought after by a lot of other podcasters as well. He's inspiring. I think he inspires a lot of people too. But I don't know whether he probably does empower people because they listen to him and they can use some of the arguments he uses in their own situations. But whether or not he'd be the kind of person who could create, develop, and lead an organisation, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that it matters, because I don't think he's trying to do that at all.
That's not his calling. Yeah.
No, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. But in terms of leadership, leaders, I think, do need to be the kind of people who can develop organisations as well. So, if he was going to do this, then quite clearly he'd have to bring in other people. Maybe Michaela, maybe she's got, she's certainly inherited many of his qualities. She might be the right person to be his 2IC, I don't know. But she herself is hugely talented as well. So yeah, he's inspiring. I think he does empower people because he gives them arguments that they can use. He certainly is an influencer. But whether or not he'd be the kind of person who could actually develop an organisation, I don't know. But he's not trying to do so. So I'm sure he knows his limits, and he's got a fairly good idea of what his calling in life is.
Yeah, that's really good. So what can we learn from Jordan B. Peterson, in desperate times of him having his license revoked from him and all these crazy attacks against Jordan Peterson? What can we learn? Well, number one is know what your moral standing is. Know your values, know your core values, and stand strong against them. Just stand up for what you know. But another thing, just as a side note, you be prepared. Have the extra, set yourself up financially just in case you're going to hit desperate times. Be prepared so that when desperate times do hit, that you have the resources, the ability to be able to fight through those times. But please, like Jordan Peterson, stand strong stand strong with your convictions. But also, as another thing, I will just say, hey, let me encourage you, go and check out Jordan B. Peterson. If you have not seen his stuff, go and search him now. Go and watch his, after you watch this video. Go and check out his stuff. Links below for all of their, for the links to his channel and his video. Incredible videos, incredible teaching series that he does. He does incredible video interviews with some amazing leaders. I think that, as Dr. Rod said, he's an incredible influencer, and I think a real positive influence on society nowadays. Hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube with Leadership podcast. If you've liked that, give it a thumbs up. If you've got any thoughts of how it challenged or helped your leadership, put a comment below, and we'd be honored if you would consider subscribing for more leadership content. Also, make sure you check out the playlist for more episodes like this.